Hello, I'm Katherine Springer, and this is my project on dual coding and multimedia learning for my Education 734 class at Liberty University. Technology use in education is on the upward trend and is becoming increasingly more common. This form of multimedia has potential to show incredible benefits for education and learners, particularly when applied using the dual coding theory. There is more to learning than only being able to retain and repeat information. Instead, meaningful learning entails the attainment of the knowledge and then being able to apply that knowledge into other areas. The dual coding theory and multimedia principles can help reduce learners' cognitive load by helping to decrease the burden of the working memory. When used correctly, and it can help learners attain more information that would otherwise cause them to become overwhelmed. Studies have shown the potential benefits to learning outcomes from applying the dual coding theory and multimedia learning theories in education. These educational benefits can give students an advantage in the learning outcomes and overall comprehension of their studies. The dual coding theory is a theory on cognition that was first proposed in 1971 by Alan Pavio. A Canadian psychologist, Pavio based the idea that developing mental images helps improve learning. The theory describes the cognitive process of humans when learning. Pavio found that learning recognition happened faster when images and words were based on two cognitive channels, the verbal and nonverbal, and that it was more beneficial to use both channels instead of a unitary coding. While separate channels, the two systems are interconnected regarding understanding and learning information. It has always been a helpful theory in human learning field. The dual coding theory explains how the mind and memory can be affected by imagery and is used to explain how the brain takes in verbal and visual information through two separate channels. Based on page 2 of Lang and others' research, they wrote, the verbal system facilitates sequential processing while the imageal system facilitates parallel processing. The dual coding theory implies that using pictures with written information has the ability to enhance learners' memory and processing information. The dual coding theory falls right in line with the principle of multimedia. The multimedia principle states that learning increases when words and pictures are synchronously provided together instead of only words. There is great importance in learning how to appropriately apply the dual coding theory to educational materials, since using educational technology alone is not helpful for students. However, when paired using the dual coding theory, there can be benefits to learner engagement and a reduced effort on the working memory. This is why the dual coding theory is an underlying theory in many practices that relate to the student's learning and working memory. Multimedia theoretically can reduce the load on working memory when applied correctly. Meaningful learning is more likely to occur when words and pictures are presented close together. Multimedia components include animations, images, drawings, graphs, and videos. It was discussed in a study that the increasing interest in multimedia and technology as it pertains to education in their study of the dual coding theory and multimedia learning. When used appropriately, these tools can enhance the student's learning and aid in knowledge gained. Using the multimedia elements can aid in the learning and understanding of content. These elements work in different methods with the brain. However, if used incorrectly, multimedia can actually have a negative impact on learning. For example, pictures that accompany the content being taught can benefit based on the dual coding theory and multimedia principles. However, it has been studied and discovered that decorative images meant to emotionally engage learners and do not relate to the content can be detrimental to the student's learning. When multimedia is implemented in children's books, it has actually had the ability to help children as early as kindergarten comprehend the story and language development. However, when verbal and nonverbal information is mismatched, the learner has a heavy mental load and it may interfere with their learning. A study that was conducted to see if the benefits of multimedia had on learning outcomes found that presentations with successive multimedia presentation improved learner outcome. There have been many studies into the dual coding theory and its potential benefits in education and learning. Most of them show how, by activating both channels of the brain, students can make more connections on what is being taught, while connections help students move knowledge from the working memory to the long-term memory faster and more efficiently. The two selected studies show examples of how teaching vocabulary, terms, and foreign language content is enhanced with the dual coding theory and multimedia. In a study conducted by Liu and others, their research explored the incorporation of the dual coding theory with computer technology to improve students' learning and mindset and effectiveness during a vocabulary lesson. The study was conducted with 88 eighth graders. They set two classes into groups, an experimental group and a control group. The students were taught vocabulary, one group getting computer enhanced that followed the dual coding theory, and the other group was taught in the traditional manner. The study found that the visual aids should be presented to students when they are learning vocabulary so that more meaningful connections happen, and the dual coding theory dramatically improves the quality of the education compared to traditional methods. The dual coding theory can also be applied to learning another language. In a different study on applying the dual coding theory using computers to teach English vocabulary to increase learning outcome, the study resulted in that students did better when the vocabulary lesson had been enhanced with the dual coding theory. The research states that from the findings of this study, all English vocabulary lessons in the future should be enhanced with the dual coding theory, and that this way of teaching aided students in terms of information entering their long-term memory. Teaching a language in this way helps students improve their cognitive levels. In one example of multimedia elements being used with dual coding was the use of digital storybooks. Digital storybooks can help provide more support for learning and help students process this information. The combination of a written story with multimedia enhancements helped the children with their mental imagery of the story. In the study comparing digital storybooks with traditional books in a preschool class, the use of multimedia enhanced stories improved student comprehension more than when they read the traditional story. Researchers also reviewed the impact of multimedia learning in a medical school setting. They found that using multimedia elements such as pictures and videos can ease the learner's working memory by engaging the brain's dual coding channels. This means that educators and instructional designers need to be cognizant of what media they use, and it needs to add to the instruction and not detract from it. The study was unable to confirm the advantages of segmenting using multimedia, but found that thoughtfully placing multimedia did help the learners retain the information and avoid a cognitive overload. In a different study, Lee and some other researchers used the dual coding theory and applied it to their review of the age of a live streamers and how it affected their viewer engagement. They had participants view 1-minute videos from streamers and review the engagement of each of the 127 streamers to see if the age estimation along with the voice age would impact the viewer. From this study, the older facial age of the streamer's physical appearance would negatively impact the viewer and their engagement. And on the other hand, if the age was determined to be older in the streamer's voice, there was a more positive impact in viewer engagement. The cognitive theory of multimedia learning outlines techniques to improve meaningful learning when processing load of essential information exceeds the cognitive capacity of the learner. This is the definition written by Socher and Beckler-Blees. Learners' working memory is limited in the capacity and how much it can handle at one time. This cognitive limitation has been linked with students' academic achievement across multiple subjects, meaning finding a way to help reduce their cognitive load on the learner's working memory is extremely important for educators and instructional designers. This limitation can be overcome with the use of multimedia learning. In a study that was reviewed and looked at the Baddeley's model, which states that working memory load could be enhanced by applying multiple principles. The cognitive load theory was developed to explain the working memory limitations of learners. The cognitive load theory explains how before knowledge can be stored in a long-term memory, it must first go through working memory. This is where learners can become overwhelmed and shut down if their working memory becomes too overloaded with information and they're not able to process it. Multimedia can help reduce the cognitive load on the learner's working memory. When the learning objective requires a high cognitive load, educators can use visual and audio to avoid overloading learners and to pull from these dual channels. The new generation of students is often referred to as digital natives. However, these tech-savvy learners benefit from using multimedia based on Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. A study found that even with a high cognitive load, if the educational material was poorly designed with multimedia learning, it will become ineffective for learners. The studies that were reviewed have shown that the application of the dual coding theory and multimedia for learning can improve student understanding. The dual coding theory has an essential role in education and learning. If educators and instructional designers apply these principles, the learner's working cognitive load can be increased, and therefore they can retain more information that is being taught. Torgerson and Bowe found that the meaningful use of multimedia in presentations can produce a better learning outcome than just presentation without multimedia. And it can also relieve the learner's short-term memory for a larger capacity. Their study can also be impactful for special education as well as software development for those learners. Educators and instructional designers must consider the learner's cognitive load when designing learning materials. By using the dual coding theory and multimedia learning principles, they have the ability to reduce the efforts on the working memory and help keep the learner from being overwhelmed. Multimedia that is used must be impactful to the learner and help aid the dual channels. Simply using decorative multimedia images to enhance an appearance of a presentation will not benefit the learner. The study of live streamers lets us know that dual channels can also be impacted based on estimated age of the streamer. The study allows educators and instructional designers to see that if they would like higher engagement from learners, they need to consider the visual and audio age of the video that is being selected. This goes along with multimedia principles that imply multimedia must be used carefully when selected to benefit the learner, or otherwise the multimedia will have a negative impact on the learner and the material that is being taught. The studies reviewed in this have laid a foundation for future research opportunities. One opportunity is looking into the cognitive load and if applying the dual coding theory in multimedia learning can increase the learner's cognitive load over time. There is an implication that thoughtful application of the dual coding theory in multimedia learning will help learners increase their cognitive load. The potential impact of these theories will benefit both educators and students. Increasing learners' cognitive load would have the ability to allow the learner to not become as easily overwhelmed over time. There is clear evidence that using the dual coding theory and multimedia principles can help information move from the working memory into the long-term memory. But there have yet to be studies done to show that if it can increase the time it takes for the information to move from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. This study would be impactful for educators since items stored in short-term memory are not able to be processed and used later on in learning. Future research is also needed to explore the dual coding memory and cognitive load theory in multimedia in the development of multimedia educational tools. Studies have shown strong promise in using subtitling to enhance learners' vocabulary and language skills. This is due to previous studies only having a small sample population, and increasing the sample size will give a define more data to show the benefits of subtitles. There also needs to be research on the study of subtitles that are actively used by learners and the impact it has on the cognitive load. The implications of applying the dual coding theory and multimedia learning principles can be applied further for young children's comprehension of stories. Using digital stories has shown that it can aid in the comprehension of the story, but giving tools to help the reader, such as the ability to zoom in on the image and highlight essential details, and can increase the comprehension of the reader. There has also been the potential impact to increase students' language and literacy skills by further study of applying these theories of digital storybooks, and also how they can use multimedia enhanced storybooks to benefit learner engagement and improve the learner's environment, both of the students and the educators. In conclusion, this paper has explored the significance of the learning theories, particularly in the dual coding theory and its application in combination with multimedia principles to enhance education. The theoretical framework of the dual coding theory established by Alan Pavio in 1971 highlights the interconnectedness of verbal and nonverbal channels. This illustrates how the integration of images and words can optimize the learning process. The multimedia principle further emphasizes that the simultaneous presentation of words and pictures fosters an improved learning outcome. Multimedia, encompassing elements such as animations, images, and videos, has the potential to alleviate the constraints of working memory, a critical aspect of the cognitive load theory. When used appropriately, multimedia aids in the comprehension and retention of information, thereby positively impacting the overall learning experience. However, it is essential to note that improper use of multimedia, such as incorporating unrelated decorative images, can harm learning. The evidence supporting the dual coding theory's effectiveness in education is underscored by studies demonstrating the application in vocabulary lessons and language learning. Moreover, integrating multimedia elements such as digital storybooks has also shown promise in enhancing comprehension and engagement, especially in early childhood education. The paper emphasizes the practical implication of incorporating the dual coding theory and multimedia principles in educational practices. Educators and instructional designers play a crucial role in optimizing the cognitive load of learners. By thoughtfully integrating multimedia elements, the studies reviewed provide valuable insight into the potential benefits for diverse learner groups, including those in the special education realm. Future research opportunities are identified, including exploring the impact of dual coding theory and multimedia on increasing learners' cognitive load, and investigating the time dynamics of information transfer from short-term to long-term memory. Additionally, there is a call for further research in developing multimedia educational tools, emphasizing subtitling and its potential to enhance the vocabulary and language skills of learners. Combining the dual coding theory and multimedia principles offers a promising avenue for advancing educational practices. As educators and researchers continue to explore and refine these theories, there is a potential to unlock new dimensions in enhancing learner engagement, comprehension, and overall quality of education. Thank you for listening.